recess last night, when we recessed, we were on a motion by Senator Respicio to delete Section 6, which is the JFK Maintenance Insurance Agreement, the appropriation of $1,568,000. There was a request that we gather additional information and get some representatives from the individuals who may be familiar with this section of the bill and the agreement, and we were able to, I think we have the Guam Economic Development Authority, which negotiated the agreement during the process of securing the financing and the construction of JFK, and we have them this morning. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and call in the representatives for GITA. We have Mr. Carl Pangilinan, Tina Garcia, I believe, and Mr. John Reyes from BBMR is here as well. And so we'll go ahead and bring these individuals in, and then we'll proceed with any questions that any members of the body may have. Don't peek at the... Thank you very much. We will reconvene then this session, and I'll go ahead and begin with Senator Respicio, the mover of the motion. We have, when you're, just please introduce yourselves for the record so that we have that for the history and the proceedings of this.
John Rios, Director of BBMR.
Tina Garcia from the GITA Financial Services Division.
Carl Pangilinan, Administrator for GITA.
Thank you very much. Senator Respicio.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And right now, as you pointed out, we're on page 18, Section 6 of the bill. And when we had this discussion yesterday, my recollection, as well as other members of this body, their recollection basically is the same. That the question is, why do we have to appropriate an additional $1.5 million? And to be clear, this Territorial Education Facilities Fund is funded by property taxes. And so if this is money that does not have to be paid for in this budget, because this money should have already been covered in the current contract, it is the question that we are asking ourselves, and I'm happy that BBMR and GITA is here. You know, Mr. Speaker, when this contract, or when the bid or the RFP first came out for the JFK campus, the construction of that school, we saw that it was to be financed, and it's a build, operate, transfer, a BOT program. And we saw that this company that responded to the RFP was supposed to secure their own financing. And then little did we know that GITA was the one who spearheaded that financing. And then we also saw instances where we believe the contract should have required them to provide the collateral equipment. And then when JFK moved out of the Teton campus back to their original home, they took the equipment from Teton. And so, you know, a lot of us raised questions at the time, and some of us more than others. We had a member of this body write numerous letters to the public auditor asking her to do a contract, an audit on this whole transaction. And so I appreciate the opportunity to generate this kind of discussion. And I'm of the position that this $1.5 million should not be appropriated, and that this section should be deleted so that more monies can be available, for instance, like to the judiciary, where they're facing a $1.3 million shortfall. And so I appreciate the opportunity to have this discussion.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any questions to the panel on the Senator Guthards?
I'd like someone to explain how this got in this budget and why. When we were under the impression that the cost of maintenance for JFK would be built into the annual payments, the commitments that were made, not as a separate appropriation.
Thank you, Senator Guthertz. First of all, I'd like to just to clarify, number one, GITA was not a part of the negotiation for the insurance and maintenance contract. We're not a party to that contract. It's between the GDOE and I believe the developer and DPW. It was actually DPW's RFP that went out for the insurance and maintenance component of this particular financing. To backtrack just a little bit, and the reason why GITA was involved in this particular financing was because it was Section 30 backed, and there was a federal fund source, and that's the reason why GITA got involved. There were certificates of participation, or COPs, and then the insurance and maintenance component, which, by the way, was budgeted last year and appropriated in last year's budget. That particular part of the contract, again, was negotiated between DOE and DPW. I'd like to turn your attention, and I'm not too sure if you have a copy of page 24 of our debt abstract, which is the section particular to the JFK financing project. And quite simply, it's the section there under additional rents. It states on October 15th, 2012 and October 15th of each year thereafter, the lessee will pay the lessor an additional rent payment, but only from available funds in the amount of $1,568,000, subject to the approval of the annual budget submitted 60 days prior to the beginning of the fiscal year, December 2nd, as determined under the insurance and maintenance agreement. So, I mean, this wasn't a hidden fee. It was contained within our debt abstract. It was there was the debt service column, and then the insurance and maintenance column, and that was kind of put there as an informational, that we need to identify that that annual number and appropriate that annual number annually. But as far as the negotiations and what was needed and the dollar amount, again, that was an agreement between DOE and the developer, I believe, with DPW leading the request for a proposal.
What I would like to know is, what did the contract say between the government of Guam and the company that was responsible for rebuilding the school? What was the language in the contract?
Mr. Reeves, would you have any information on that?
Are you talking about specific language within the lease agreement?
With respect
Yeah.
to maintenance?
With the contract with CAPFA, right?
Because we have had great difficulty seeing that contract. The only time I was able to see the contract was because of Joanne Brown. She happened to get a copy, but we asked Gita for a copy. They didn't give it to us. I just want to know, what does the contract say with reference to maintenance? Does it say the government of Guam shall appropriate money every year to pay for the maintenance of JFK?
Senator Guthrie, I'm looking at a section within the actual contract itself. It's basically what I read was paraphrased from the actual language of the contract, and we can circulate copies of this portion.
But can you read the
of
language in the contract for everybody?
Same thing, on the date of commencement of the first initial term, the lessee shall pay to the lessor, but only from available funds, an additional rent payment in the amount of, this one says, this was the first term, $215,000. On the date of commencement in the second initial term thereof, the lessee shall pay to the lessor as provided in section 4.06, but only from available funds, an additional rent payment in the amount of $1,568,000.
Say when there was some solicitation for interested companies. It is on. It is on. What did the RFP say with with reference to
The-
soliciting participation for the public-private partnership for the school with reference to maintenance. I want to know if there was a change between the RFP and this contract.
I don't have a copy of the RFP on me.
Mr. Chairman, how much are we paying every year for the school under this agreement, aside from maintenance? How much are we paying?
Mr. Rios, the budgeted amount that requested by the governor was 4.6.
Yeah, just for the debt service alone, it's about 5.1 million, which I believe is listed on, you guys went through the debt service yesterday.
Right.
Um,
It's 4.5
no, it's 5 point, yeah.
5,131,938.
938. And then this one here was separate, which is 1.5 is for the insurance and maintenance, and it was listed as coming out from the general fund. At that, and I noticed that there were some changes, and you took it out of the TEF,
That's correct.
right? Okay.
And this is for 20 years, Mr. Chairman?
I believe so.
And so, regardless of the source, this is an obligation to the government, and, should we not make this appropriation, I mean, there's a chance that we would be in default, and, hereby affecting our ability to access the markets and especially other certificates of participation and lease projects.
I guess what surprises me is that 5.1 million, you said 5.1 million, Mr.
Yes.
Rios?
That's correct.
That 5.1 million is not sufficient payment every year to cover the debt service and the maintenance of the school. That's what surprises me. And can you tell us again who signed the contract between the government of Guam and the private company? What were the signatories on that contract?
On the actual lease agreement documents, the
Yes.
signators were the Attorney General of Guam, the then Governor Felix Camacho, and Dr. Underwood, Superintendent of DOE.
I just wonder where's the due diligence, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you very much,
Thank
Senator
you.
Guthertz. I have Speaker Wampat, then I have Senator Frank Blas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Now, Mr. Gita Pangilinan, is when you said that Gita was only involved, of course, because of the Section 30 backing, and I recall, of course, yes, with the former administration and when DPW director was here, and the governor's office at the time also was here because there was a need to change something in the law in order for bond counsel to go out and sell the bonds. And at the time also, OPA was questioning the fact, and at that time it wasn't even 1.5 for the insurance and for the maintenance. It was just 1 million of the maintenance, which was, in our understanding at the very beginning, and that's why you're getting so many members here saying the same thing, because we were under the impression that the entire debt service was inclusive of the maintenance, and primarily because Gita had been part of another negotiation for 4 schools with a compact impact, which included, again, in its debt service, insurance, and, again, maintenance. So we find this very strange that although Gita was a part of the negotiation to make sure, or whatever your involvement is because of the Section 30 monies, federal monies, similar to compact impact, that somehow the government let this somehow fall through the cracks, that it did not become a part of the debt service, the annual debt service. And at the time, the question was, of course, those 4 schools, the maintenance was $1 million for 4 schools. And here we're talking about 1 school with maintenance and insurance of $1.5 million. And our understanding, my understanding at least, and what I saw when I visited the schools and met with the school at JFK and met with the principals and assistant principals, especially the assistant principal, Miss Hannah Gutierrez, who's responsible for the work that's being done there. And our understanding is, and that's why I think everyone's having a very difficult time with this, is that there's only one custodian to do the cleaning of that campus. And we're paying $1.5 million for maintenance and, of course, insurance. So, I mean, I can't begin to fathom, of course, what else, are we paying for? I mean, granted that there will be some problems in terms of breakdown of maybe equipment, for that matter, maybe some vandalism maybe by, others, and they would need to go in and do the repair. But $1.5 million and only 1 custodian. And somehow we made this slip through our hands. And there's not much, of course, in terms of what the legislature can do other than to, authorize, of course, this expenditure, authorize, to go out for the department either to go out and, sell the bonds. But this is totally out of our hands, and it's an executive side. And how did we somehow let something like this happen and did not use what was previously done for 4 schools with $1 million for insurance and maintenance? Do you understand? I mean, why we're questioning this and why we were all under the impression when they first came down, when DPW came down here, GITA was here, OPA was here, and that whole question that the exorbitant amount of this insurance and maintenance, and why isn't it now a part of the debt service? And, you guide, I'm sure, the process, because these are federal dollars that we're talking about here, and I'd like to know. So, Ms. Garcia, I know that you've been in the past administration and this current administration, and I'd like to know exactly to what extent GITA's involvement was here when you saw this, because ideally we wanted, of course, that not just the finance, built, lease back, but it was to include collateral equipment, it was to include insurance and maintenance, for the entire life of that loan for that school. Can you please enlighten us?
Madam Speaker, again, I will ultimately turn it over to Tina, as she was, involved, in the process in the prior administration. The only thing that I do recall reviewing, and I believe it was submitted to this body, was a report. It was a third-party report, independent study done by the then director of DPW that showed the insurance and maintenance needs for that school and for the actual campus. And I believe the study showed that the amount that they were projecting actually came under what this study indicated. I believe it was something like $1.9 million at the time. Also contained within that study, it shows the population comparison between the batch of 4 schools, as well as what was going to be added to the student body of JFK with the new structure. So all of those things mixed in, they came out to that $1.5 million number. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Tina for a little bit of color on the history of the negotiations.
Thank you. As Cara mentioned, there was or as you have mentioned, there was an OPA inquiry into the insurance and maintenance costs, and there was a direct comparison between the two. And this was done, again, we were involved in the financing, so we were in oversight, but the actual negotiation was looking at what DOE wanted, and DPW, because they ran the procurement, they were the ones that had to ensure that the costs were fair and reasonable. And again, at the time, the DPW director had a number of studies to refer to that, although he did state that although it was higher than the 4 schools, it was still within reason of national standards. And what I'd like to add is, although the budget allows for 1.568 as the cap on the insurance and maintenance, there are provisions with the indenture, within the lease, that allows for DOE to adjust. If they, every year they're supposed to sit with the developer and talk about that budget and then present that budget. And that's why, in this case, we said it should fall under the budget of DOE, so that every year they can come in and say, we agree to this number. They're not tied to that exact number, but every year they're supposed to negotiate the amount.
So you're saying that there is this window every year to go in to renegotiate. So if the department decides then, because this thing, $1.5 million up to 1.8, and I'm wondering then is that they could have an option of 2 things. Maybe decide not to go with IBC anymore to do this, and either have the department do it in-house, because I'm sure it's not going to cost $1.5 million, or even go out and contract it to another company, probably. Because, and the reason why I'm saying this is because one person who's there to clean that entire campus, and granted, maybe, I don't know what would be a reasonable amount to insure the building, whether it's 500,000 maybe, and then the 1 million could be used for maintenance, and yes, for other parts, to repair the campus.
Right.
Is that an option then for the department?
They can negotiate. What we have to keep in mind is the facility is being leased to JFK, and so the developer, they have an obligation to cover themselves on basic insurance, maintenance, ensuring there's a capital reserve to replace air conditioners or painting down the line. All of that is part of this budget. But as far as the daily maintenance, that is certainly negotiable according to the lease agreement. But the process is, again, before the budget, they have to agree sometime in like December, January, so it falls within our budget year.
Okay. Thank you very much, Speaker Wampat. Senator Blas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I was just making some comparative notes with the governor's submission for 26 and the substitute version. In the governor's version, it says that it's the Tizen maintenance and lease agreement.
Yes.
Tizen lease maintenance and insurance agreement.
That's
And in ours, and the substitute is the
JFK.
JFK.
Yes,
What was the change in that?
during the budget hearings, we confirmed with the director, the administration representatives, that when the governor submitted that budget, it was in error, basically. They meant the JFK. Is that correct, Mr. Reeves?
Yeah, when JFK also was over at Tizen. And so when they used it was really for JFK, but if you remember correctly, JFK was up at Tizen prior to moving to their new
Okay,
facility.
that was my,
They,
just want to make sure I got.
they found out that JFK moved after the budget was submitted.
Thank you,
We're
Mr.
in the
Chair.
process.
I'm still under the weather, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Senator Aileen Yamashita.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Welcome to your legislature. Thank you for being here. And so then if that was an oversight, are we saying that the amount of money that was needed to take care of maintenance and custodial at the teaching campus, understanding the footprint is very different, that same amount is what is needed at our new campus?
I believe the amount right now for the Untalan is a little different. I know that there's insurance and maintenance, but I don't have a copy of that agreement here. But I'm not really sure if it's the same amount. Would you?
That one, it's a sliding scale, and if I recall, I mean, it's all lumped into the annual tax credit amount per the contract. So that amount changes over time, and it's not static.
Right, so I don't see how we can just simply say that 1.5 when we were at TGen was needed, and now we need that same amount at Tumon.
No, ma'am, that was it was just an error, and instead of Tzen, it should have stated JFK.
But it was
The 1.5 is strictly for the JFK.
correct. But that was
additional
the
rents.
amount that was reflected in the budget last year. Yes, because that was the mistake. That was the oversight. We simply, replicated it. I don't see how the amount remains the same. But further than that, if Tina made a statement, and I'm wondering, Speaker Ben, what I heard Ms. Garcia say is that every year the Department of Education, who signed off on this, can negotiate, right, for their needs. And I'm wondering if they have done that, if they have gone back to see if there's any monies that can be saved and used somewhere else, or, I mean, certainly we can reappropriate to another place that needs it. Has that kind of conversation occurred?
I can't attest to that, but I have to say again, the basic insurance and maintenance has to be included before the regular maintenance can be negotiated. And yeah, we'd have to ask DOE if they've negotiated.
Have they actually talked with the contractor and with everybody who needs to be at the table? And I know Mr. Fernandez has just joined us, but certainly Mr. Chargaloff with Ms. Gutierrez have been overseeing this whole operation. And I know at the beginning they weren't happy with the services that we're getting. That I know for sure. And so indeed, if they're not happy with the service, then why would we keep that service?
Okay. Thank you very much. Well, yes, I have Senator Rodriguez, or did you just want to follow up on something real quick?
I just
Senator
wanted to
Blas?
follow up.
Okay.
I'm a little concerned here. Wasn't there an insurance clause in the JFK contract to begin with? I thought that was standard language.
But it's separate, though. We're looking into the documents right
So,
now.
Mr. Chair, while they're looking, so that in word of expediency, because I've got some follow-up questions to that as well, but you can go to Senator Rodriguez until.
All right, thank you. Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning. Carl or Tina, you mentioned on the agreement, there's a provision there that says that from available funding sources, that this money needs to be paid to the developer, right? So what's the consequence if we remove this section of the substitute bill and not have it because it won't be available once it's removed? What's the consequence now to the school, to the facility?
If this entire section is omitted, then there will be no available funding to take care of this obligation. And like I mentioned, we at that point, I mean, we could be in default with CAFA, and I mean, it would just be a downward spiral. Spiral.
Aren't they in default right now with us? With the completion of the facility?
In default? No, we paid them. Are they in violation of? I'm not too sure what the status of their occupation. I know that they've got conditional occupation at the very least. I don't know if they've got final occupancy.
Okay, and I guess, Mr. Chair, it's probably not for them to answer those questions because we know that the school is not complete, and so what I'm trying to point out here is that if we don't have this, the consequence is that we'll be in default of the contract, but at the same time, these guys are also in default in giving us a complete facility We know that before the beginning of the school year, we had students and teachers, administrators still talking about how the school is not complete. And so I guess it's another set of individuals that could answer those questions.
Okay.
So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. I'm going to have Senator Speaker Wampat, and then I'm going to go back to, did you have the answer? Ms. Garcia, were you able to find that section for Senator Blas?
Yes, I'm looking at the insurance and maintenance agreement that was signed in August 2010. And it says during the term of this agreement, the contractor shall at lesser's cost and expense arrange for and maintain in full force and effect policies of insurance as set forth in 7.01 of the lease agreement. And 7.01, here we go. So the insurance to be include a policy or policies of insurance against loss or damage to the project resulting from fire, lightning, vandalism, so property insurance, public liability insurance, earthquake, windstorm insurance, and maintain or cause to be maintained flood insurance for any portion of the project located in a floodplain.
So there is insurance.
They're required to have insurance.
Okay, so then
Yes. They're requiring that insurance be purchased.
but I'm getting to here, Mr. Chair. This says for maintenance and insurance agreement.
Yes.
So why are we paying double on insurance? It's already being paid by the bond.
No,
No, that was a,
it's an annual cost that's paid from the additional rentals.
Additional rental?
Right, this amount, the 1.568 is supposed to cover all insurance costs, all maintenance costs, to include capital reserve, capital replacement reserve funding. So again, debt service just covers borrowing the funds to build the school, cover all other costs. This additional cost, this additional rental payment is again because they're leasing the facility to us, they're required to provide this service to Guam as the lessor. So again, it's an additional service not covered by the debt service. Debt service is simply to pay bondholders for borrowing to build the project.
all right. Thank you. Senator Blas?
I'm still, Mr. Chair, I've got a little concern. I can see 1.58. I remember the whole discussion with regards to coming to that figure for the Tizen properties. Now we're talking about the JFK properties. I just find it very odd that, first off, really we spent 1.58 for Tizen and for the size of that property, and it's the same amount for maintenance and insurance for the JFK property. First off, have we already started to working a contract with regards to the maintenance and insurance on this thing? Is this the exact figure? How much is for maintenance and how much is for insurance? Maybe I should break that down.
Mr. Rios, do you have that information?
It's in the contract here, and I believe it's negotiated between Department of Education and CAPFA, right? CAPFA. We're checking
I
out
would
for-
think, Mr. Chair, that there, with regards to competitiveness and everything, it's
Yeah, we'll try to get that information.
and yeah, we can go back to this. Can we bookmark this thing so because I'd like to know
Well, we
how
have
much is
we have a motion, and that's why we're here. We're
Okay.
discussing. So the motion is to delete this section. And, you know, we wanted to get the additional background information in order to
Okay, and for me to be able to vote on that motion, I would
Sure.
appreciate if we had.
It depends
what-
on, it
what-
depends on the outcome of the motion.
Understood,
Sure.
but for me to be able to
Yeah.
vote on the motion,
Right.
I would appreciate if I can get what the anticipated costs will be for the maintenance and what the anticipated costs will be for the insurance. Thank you.
We'll come to that. I have Senator Espicio and then Senator Guthers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, maybe we can also call in Lester Carlson, as he was a party to the negotiations of this entire situation. But, you know, irrespective of what the contract says, Mr. Speaker, the question by Senator Guthers was what was contained in the RFP, and how did somehow that $5.1 million to service that debt, which from the very beginning, we've been monitoring these discussions very closely, and there was a requirement in that procurement for maintenance and insurance, and how all of a sudden do we have a contract that breaks out an additional $1.5 million annually? Was that contract amended at any time after it was signed?
No, sir. What the law authorized was a maximum payment of 6.9 when the law was first passed. That was our cap on debt service or payment for the school. And so if you add the debt service plus this additional rental, the total comes up to 6.6. So we're still within the what was capped at the original authorization. So
But the entire 6.6 is not coming out of that debt service. You're now asking for additional resources that are.
no, the 6.6 covers the base rental, which goes towards the debt, and the additional rentals. So if you add the 5.1 that was at the front part of the budget plus the 1.568, that'll give you a total of 6.6, and that will not go up unless it's agreed upon. But that's where we capped it at. It's 6.69. So the debt service is capped.
So why didn't you have the entire 6.6 come from the same funding source?
Because as I stated earlier, the insurance and maintenance has to be negotiated by DOE annually. So, I mean, we could leave it and put the whole thing in, the entire additional plus the base into debt service. But by doing it this way, we thought DOE had the opportunity to negotiate the
Yeah, but
amount.
by doing it this way, you're tying up money that can go to DOE, and so the money that this budget allocates for GDOE can go somewhere else in other areas. I mean, I just don't understand why you would do it this way and leave a lot of now with the other municipal leasebacks. How is that being arranged in the maintenance contracts for those?
They're set up similarly, but the other one is done, again, through compact impacts. So if DOE and the developer, again, come up or agree to the insurance and maintenance amount, then that is drawn down from compact impact.
But is the developer for those other projects also responsible for maintenance?
Yes. For the four schools, yes.
Yeah. So again, you're saying that if this section were deleted, there's.
We would have to put it at the front end, under debt.
And at
We'd
this
still have
point,
to pay
no
it.
negotiations have started to determine how much it's going to cost for the JFK maintenance and insurance?
Yeah, I think that's a timing issue. The insurance and maintenance amount is due, I believe, in October 15th. And so, I mean, sometime, I don't know if it falls after that, where they evaluate the services that they've received to include, the insurance portion. I really think it's the maintenance part that might be a little bit fluid.
Is it responsible at this point to expose ourselves and tell the vendor how much money is on the table? Do you really think they're going to say, oh, I can see 1.5 million available, but I'll do it for $1 million? I mean, that's the problem. You're laying your cards on the table, and that's why everything is suspect, and I don't understand why this is being done this way.
Well, we laid our cards on the table when the initial authorization was 6.9, and they actually came in at 6.6. So again, it's, we have to review it annually to ensure that we are getting
But are we
the best
required, follow-up to Speaker Wampat's question, are we required to go with the same developer to maintain the property, or can we do this through an RFP?
The developer would have to, because the developer, according to our agreement with them, is responsible for maintenance. And they've attached a 30-year maintenance schedule that they've agreed to again at the beginning. If DOE wants to maintain it, again, because they own the facility for the next, for the term of the financing or the term of the debt, they would have to approve of the maintenance to ensure again that their investment is being protected. At the end of the year, at the end of the term, they turn it back over to the government. So again, if we do a poor job at maintenance, then they're going to have to come in because again, it's their facility.
I think your question, Senator Respicio, comes down to whether we appropriate less now for whatever's negotiated, or we appropriate that amount and realize savings at a later date, right?
No, my question is, why are we even doing these things this way when the maintenance and insurance for that property should be factored into the debt service? Because what if we don't have any additional resources outside of that debt service? Do you think the bondholders will be? And the other question I have is, what was required in the RFP, and also through the procurement process, and what actually ended up in the contract are two different things. And who is accountable for that? I mean, if you're now saying that, be it as it may, this $1.5 million have to be paid somehow, what if we were taking it off the top of GITA's operating budget? Or what if we were taken out of BBMR's? Will we have a different story to tell? What if we require the governor's office to pay for this $1.5 million annual debt service? Would you still take the same position that it's got to be paid for?
For DOE school, are you asking?
For this particular contract, because although you take the position that DPW negotiated this, GITA played a role in the financing of this project.
Yeah. I mean, the bottom line is that it's an obligation. It's an obligation that, the ink's dry on these contracts. I think there is a window for negotiation on an annual basis. I just think it's a timing issue, and it goes back to that question whether whatever is negotiated, do we appropriate to that number, or do we appropriate to the number that's being requested and have them realize savings, should that be the case, post-negotiations?
So if you take that position, then can we take this money out of GITA's budget?
Why would you say that?
Maybe you take a different position. Maybe you try to negotiate a better deal if there's a direct impact to your agency.
For DOE school?
Well, you did the financing, right?
We did do the financing, but remember,
so $1.5 million a year for the next 20 years out of the government of Guam's operating budget?
I really don't understand the nature of your question, Senator.
Well, you refuse to understand it. Because you refuse to say what's contained in the RFP. You're taking the position that this is something that DPW negotiated, that the ink is dry. Oh, well, let's just move forward.
Well, we're moving forward in putting it with DOE because they have the opportunity on an annual basis, and we're going to say this for the 8th time, they have an opportunity on an annual basis to negotiate what that rate is, to negotiate the maintenance portion.
I'll conclude here by saying that the administration continues to threaten GovGuam employees that they're going to lose their jobs, saying that they like to pay for tax refunds, and we're stealing from tax refunds when he has the ability to pay those things now. And then we have instances like this where we just don't see that we're being prudent in how we're negotiating for these types of contracts. And so if there's an opportunity to delete this section, I stand in support of that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Senator Respicio. Just for the record, my office sent a FOIA request to the governor's office requesting for the insurance contracts and the maintenance agreements on this. We got the contract, but no maintenance schedule and the cost breakdown of the 1.5. So can we
I
follow
believe
up?
it'd be part of this, this agreement here, because it's required in the
No,
agreement.
no, but I
And
know.
if you want to remove, if you want to delete maintenance and insurance from the school, from JFK, then I think you would need to check with bond counsel, we could actually remove it. I
Right.
mean, I think it's important that we check with bond counsel, you know, whether we breach the contract or
But my
not.
argument is, why couldn't this 1.5 be part of the debt service?
That
Part
shouldn't
of
be
the
a problem.
5.1?
It's the same funding source. I mean,
Yeah.
we're taking it out of either the general fund or the TEF. Here, you've changed it to the TEF fund, so it really doesn't matter. You could actually place it on the debt service area, because it will be taken from the top.
And whether or not this maintenance is part of the existing procurement. For-
From the RFP,
And if
and
we're
I
paying
think
for
that
this
has to be
double-
checked in
Yeah.
I guess back in 2010 or
How about
2009,
collateral? Did you
when
ever
the
res-
RFP went out.
Did you ever resolve the issue of the collateral equipment if the developer was to provide collateral equipment?
Collateral equipment.
Because that's a $5 million requirement that this developer should have absorbed, but yet when they moved out of Tizen, they took the equipment out of Tizen, out the desk, the computer labs, and everything. Have you clarified for us if whether or not the developer was responsible to provide the collateral equipment?
Was collateral equipment part of the contract?
And that's my point. And when they were taking equipment out of Tizen, which could be used for other high schools, why didn't anybody stop that?
Okay.
They have a whole page of what was to be provided. And again, it goes everywhere from computer desks, teachers' chairs, whiteboards, bulletin boards. I mean,
There's a whole inventory list of items.
that again was something that was DOE's requirement with the developer. So they
And
were.
did the developer fulfill that requirement? You know, they even pulled whiteboards out of the Tizen campus. See, Carl, that's my point. You can't.
Yeah.
Who's enforcing this contract? If you're telling this legislature that we have to enforce the contract because this is a requirement of the bond covenant, where were you when we needed to enforce the requirement of providing collateral equipment?
Yeah, again,
It's about $5 million worth of collateral equipment that they
took out, yeah.
and then as Senator Rodriguez pointed out, we've already pointed this out collectively, is who's holding the developer accountable?
Yeah, we gotta verify with DPW and DOE on the transfer.
But you don't need to
of-
verify anything. I'm telling you right now because it was public knowledge that they stripped Tizen clean. They raided that place. Then when Antolon moved in, there was no equipment for Antolon. They had to bring their own.
Okay.
I hope I made my point, Mr. Speaker.
All right. Thank you very much. Senator Guthertz, and then we'll just.
Who purchases the insurance for the school? The government of Guam or the developer?
The developer.
So we pay the developer money to buy insurance for the project that they developed, and we're leasing the facility from them. So GovGuam's paying for the insurance, although the developer purchases the insurance.
That's correct.
So the developer has no liability in terms of any issues with reference to the insurance, since the government of Guam is paying for the insurance. Is that correct? Is the insurance in the name of the government of Guam or in the name of the developer, insurance coverage?
The assumption is that it would be in the name of the developer, since the developer still owns the property.
Okay. But we're paying for the insurance.
That's correct.
Senator Guthertz, if I may, going down the line, the reason why it was developed this way was should Guam 10 years from now decide they want to vacate JFK, the developer is still on the hook to make that debt service payment to bondholders. And so should they have another entity move in, and we said it has to stay within a school, should they have a private school move in, they would have to again charge that entity the cost of, again, like a mortgage payment plus the additional insurance and maintenance. And it's after the term with the government that that facility would turn over, and it's supposed to be in as good a condition, maintained condition.
You know, I'm just thinking, Mr. Chairman, we need to be very cautious going forward with any future arrangement such as this.
Yeah.
And I recall when this agreement was being negotiated, it wasn't a public negotiation. And none of us really saw the contract for the JFK facility and the developer until after the last administration left office. And I know that for a fact because I kept trying to get a copy of the contract. I was never able to get a copy of the contract. And Gita knows I made many requests, made requests to the governor's office, made requests to Gita. The only time I was able to see any part of the contract was with the support of Director Brown. She was able to get a copy, and she had great difficulty getting a copy of the contract herself when she took office. And then some of these things started developing. But with reference to what our speaker said, that the maintenance involves, the day-to-day maintenance of the school involves one custodian hired by the developer. Is there a way to verify that? And
I think, well, we can't verify during this budget process.
Yeah.
So we've got to kind of get ourselves back and focus
I understand.
on the motion.
I'm just concerned that we're overpaying for the maintenance of that school.
Sure.
And maybe we should request to renegotiate that.
That can be placed in here as a requirement of this.
I would like to see us do that, Mr. Chairman. And
Well, somebody's got to make the motion to do that.
well, I make a motion that this section of the budget bill contain a provision that requires an effort to renegotiate the maintenance costs for the school.
Point of
Current objection. I know. We're in the motion. She wants to amend
Yeah.
or she wants to. Well, that motion is out of order at this time
Until
because
we do
the
the other
motion
one.
is to delete.
Okay. So after that, then
Yeah,
maybe
that's correct. All right. Thank you. So, no, that motion is out of order at this time. Okay. Senator Dueñas and then Speaker Wampat.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I was going to lead to that as well. I know that before the recess yesterday, what led to us being here was an objection to the motion to withdraw or to delete this
Right.
section. So, Mr. Chair, I just have two fundamental questions I think that are important here to the panel. In your professional opinion, do you believe removing this section, deleting this section, has an implication of defaulting on our agreement, on the agreement, the contract signed by all the parties that were identified on your opening? Anyone on the panel can answer that.
By deleting the section and not addressing the obligation of paying for the additional rents, I firmly believe that we will be in default.
Okay, and Mr. Chair, I asked that question, of course, because I think that's fundamental to all of us and to this process. The second thing is that Carl, I think where the difficulty basically was arrived at here, and the other question is, can it be definitively stated that the maintenance and insurance is not contained in the $5-odd million of negotiated debt service for this high school, JFK?
Yeah, your question was that, what was it, two separate pieces? Yes.
That's correct. It is so that's clear now. That's two separate obligations. You have debt service, and in that is not contained insurance or maintenance for JFK.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So my last question, Mr. Speaker, wouldn't it be prudent, I think, at this point, maybe to invite DOE to get their understanding of the contract, as they are the prime signatory to this agreement?
I don't know that we need them. I mean, the motion is to
Point,
delete.
point of, this is what I'll do, Mr.
Yeah.
Speaker. It looks like we have questions, more questions than we have answers for. If they can state for the record under oath that this is not a double appropriation, I'll withdraw my motion to delete. But with the comment that we're going to pursue, as other senators have, what the RFP was like versus. And I know the legislature. That's why we were in a session one time, and I was off island though. But there was a law that indemnifies them and ratifies that procurement process. But we need to look back sometimes in order to move forward. And so I appreciate the discussion. And if you could assure us for the record that this is not a double appropriation and that this is not part of the $1.5 million, then I withdraw my motion to delete this section.
Yeah, this is not a double appropriation. There's an appropriation for the 5.X and then the 1.5.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chair,
Okay.
I'm in full agreement of that, and I also withdraw my objection.
Okay.
Thank you, and thank you to the panel.
All right. Thank you very much. On the motion, on the request by the mover of the motion to withdraw his motion, any objections? No objections? That motion carries. We're now on the appropriation. Oh. Okay. I know, so we're on section 6 now. Right? The motion, I just disposed of his request to withdraw to delete. Right. No, it's section, so we're back on section 6. Now I'm going to ask you for, not on the motion to withdraw, but on the section itself. So I have Speaker Wampat, and then I have Senator Guthrie's.
Thank you again very much, Mr. Chairman. I want, again, one more time. You've indicated that in the contract for the insurance and maintenance that there is room for negotiation.
Yes, there is a section right after that talks about amendments to additional rental.
Okay, and when when can that negotiation be open? Is it before October, after October?
Yeah, it would, they would have to agree to a budget. It would have to be, the payments would be on October 15th of each year thereafter. So they have to agree on such amount prior to that payment.
Okay. If they decide to negotiate, is there anything in the contract that says then that there could be, or what is considered a breach of contract?
I mean, if there's a failure by leasee to pay any additional rentals during the term of the lease, after written notice, 30 days after written notice specifying such failure, then that's considered an event of default,
Only if we fail to pay.
failure to pay.
And that's the amount that they have set. It's not negotiated, this amount is not negotiated, it's already set, $1.5 million. Is that correct?
Well, they say failure to pay any additional rentals after notice is sent. So So again, if they agree to an amount and we don't pay it,
Okay, but so you're saying, so the amount of 1.5 is the agreed negotiated amount
that would,
for it?
I believe there was just a letter, I
The
saw a
initial.
copy of a letter,
Yeah.
and there was a letter that was sent to the superintendent informing them that they're requesting additional rent of
Okay,
one.
so then, therefore, there's actually no negotiation then. They just said, this is our price, and we want you to pay this amount. So-
I don't know if anything transpired after that, but I just saw the letter informing them that they're requesting for additional rent.
And so, Mr. Chairman, so the reason why, of course, I'm asking this question is because if there is at that window, as Gita has indicated, then that we can negotiate, then you see, I'm considering, of course, preparing an amendment, is to have DOE right now then, or Gita. And the reason why I say Gita really more than DOE, because DOE is not in any position. They don't have the capability or individuals who can go in and negotiate, something such as this. It's more than likely it'll be, well, we want these, this, and this, and this done to our school, because that's what, they do. I mean, they're not in the business that Gita is in, and so it's very unfair to say then that, DOE should be the one negotiating this, and I think it's Gita's fiduciary responsibility, who sat and originally negotiated this whole bond issue, that they should be, or somebody else in the government other than just DOE. So, in considering then that I'm considering an amendment to request for DOE to go in and renegotiate this insurance, and with the option, of course, and that's why I want you to find this, is that with an option to consider other option. Would that, other than CAPFA or IBC actually doing the work, would that be a breach of contract in the amendment, saying that we want DOE to consider, when they negotiate, to consider other options? That means somebody else maybe to do the custodial work, whether it's with a totally different company, or DOE is going to do this, considering, of course, that same dollar amount. And then later on, of course, so anyway, that would be the first question in terms of an amendment that I would like to proffer, knowing, of course, what it is that I'm wanting to do, and do you see whether that will present a problem or be a breach of contract?
I would like to request for a quick review of the proposed amendment by bond counsel, just to see what impact, if any, this would have to the current lease arrangement.
Why don't we do that? Why don't we,
okay.
if that's the amendment,
Yes,
Speaker Wampa,
so-
we'll write up the amendment, we'll come back to this section,
Okay.
and then we'll get the amendment reviewed by our own legal counsels as well.
Okay, and then, so there are other things then that I also like for you to bring back to this body, which would help us, and would help, DOE, if this is something that they would like to pursue. One, of course, and we understand when we started to look at the completion of the JFK campus, and we made some visits, and they came down, and we had an oversight, a round table, and no representatives, of course, came to speak on behalf of CAPFA or IBC. But after that, CAPFA's made some decisions then. One was that they had contracted out the maintenance and the completion, rather, of the campus, the facility, and continued to keep IBC on for the custodial part of it. What I want to ask, Gita, to see if you will be able to break this down, the 1.5, is exactly how much then is the actual custodial cost for the facility that IBC has been contracted to do. how much is the capital replacement resources based on the 30-year schedule that they have put together. And the third is how much is the insurance for the, whether it's insurance for the, for public liability, loss or damage to, you know, for natural disasters and things of that nature, versus maybe a different insurance. I'm not sure whether there's an insurance for capital replacement resources as well. So those are three things I think are really very important if the department is going to open and renegotiate this new contract, because that would definitely give us you know, a better picture. The last thing that I would like to also have you research as well is because, again, like all the other schools that we've built, and this concept of to finance, build, lease back, is that collateral equipment has been a part of it. For the company to purchase collateral equipment, and JFK, as you stated there, and have a listing of this, of all of the collateral equipment that, based on your inventory, that they were supposed to provide all of this. We also, so we need to find out whether that part has been fulfilled or not. And more than likely, I think you'll find that they have not, because when JFK moved in to Tejan, all of their old furniture was spread out throughout the entire school district. Schools got them, and new equipment was purchased for the Tejan, not by IBC or CAPFA, but by Cortec on a separate contract again on that lease agreement. And when they left the campus, they took everything out of that campus. And that's why when Antelon moved in, they brought all of their equipment in as well. So at least we know that we've paid for one already when JFK moved into Tejan. And now we're supposedly under the debt service agreement in this contract for the building of JFK, that they're supposed to provide a whole set of collateral equipment. And we know for a fact that that wasn't done, other than maybe the air conditioning unit, part of the infrastructure of the school facility, the capital, not necessarily collateral equipment. So if you can get all that information for us, I think that would help us in, and we will get a copy of the amendment to you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chip.
So just to clarify, my homework, Madam Speaker, is number one, to find out if the possibility of another contractor to perform insurance or maintenance duties with regard to this additional rents contract. Number two, the breakout of the three expense components within the additional rents contract. And the third is the handling of the collateral equipment from the Teton facility back into JFK.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Senator Rodriguez, did you have any?
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I was wondering if, just speaking with the speaker earlier, now that she is looking into proposing an amendment, you know, but hearing and being presented of what was just said earlier about a letter that was that the chair received from
I saw
a copy
of
a letter that said that the amount for insurance and maintenance would be 1.586.
The request for additional rents.
Yes, the request, and then there's no other legwork after that showing any negotiations was done, and to bring that cost down. And from what Tina was reading earlier on the contract, that says there's no amount. It just says that by October 15 of each year, that we must pay the additional rent, additional monies. And so that 1.586 only came. That amount only came through a letter from the developer saying this is the amount. And so, you know, what I'm trying to get at, Mr. Chair, is that,
No.
and correct me if I'm wrong, earlier there was or I think even yesterday, there was discussion about 4 other schools that also require maintenance and insurance, and that came about to about $1 million for 4 schools. And so, one thing I'm thinking of contemplating of proposing is that on Section 6 is that we reduce this amount and we tell them this is the only amount that this government is willing to pay for insurance and maintenance based on what what is being paid on the other schools. And if you do that million, I believe with the 4 schools, it's about 250. And so that's what I want to propose to the body. And now that gives us the leverage of saying, okay, this is what's available. This is the amount that's available to pay for this provision of the contract. Instead of them coming back to us and telling us, this is how much it's going to cost, and who knows, they might come back and it might total 1.586 again. And so before I move that amendment, I want to ask, is that something that is doable, and will that now fulfill our obligation with this contract?
I'm sorry, the additional rentals was set at 1.568 in the lease agreement as per the fulfillment, as per the GovGuam's discussion with the developer to do certain things. If we want to reduce that amount to $1 million, then we would have to amend this lease agreement to say, okay, you're going to reduce it by $1 million. We're going to have to take these things out. So again, it's a negotiation that we would have to amend the existing contract, because again, they're just billing us for what we asked them to do. And so any reduction, again, would have to amend the original lease, because they would not want to expose themselves to a default by doing less without officially coming to an agreement. So again, it would be an amendment to what we negotiated in this lease.
Okay, so I understood it differently. So now that you made it clear, then I don't think it's good for us to do that, because this is something that's, as you said, listed in the contract, and then would open us up to even more liability. So I will move forward with that.
Thank you very much, Senator Rodriguez. Senator Yamashita.
Thank you very much, Speaker Ben. In follow-up to the previous speaker, I think we also need to remember that the footprints of the 4 other schools is really different from John F. Kennedy High. We have at John F. Kennedy High athletic fields and a variety of, and it's school for 2,000 kids.
2,500
2,500 kids versus elementary is usually at 750. So it is different, although Okudu is included, but that's not as huge as our JFK campus. But I do ask that what you talked about, Ms. Garcia, does need to be addressed, and that is the DOE superintendent and whomever else needs to be at the table to relook at it continuously to see how we might be able to cut corners, because as everyone, the chorus today is we need to save money. So, but thank you, Speaker Ben.
Thank you very much. So that concludes the discussion on Section 6. So 1.568 shall be allocated from the Territorial Educational Facilities Fund, Appropriation Section 2 for the Senator Blas, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
For the payment of the JFK maintenance agreement.
And I appreciate there are still some questions that and
Okay.
if we can bookmark this and then come back to this later if we.
Well,
Right.
we're going to dismiss the panel here.
Yes, but
So do you wanna ask
we
them
can do
now?
this off the line
Oh,
and everything.
okay.
I can bring back.
All right.
Okay?
Okay.
Not a problem?
All right.
Thank you very
so
much.
Thank you very much for your presence here this morning and your cooperation. Okay, so Section 6, no objections. Section 7, textbooks and collateral materials. This is the section that provides appropriation for the purchase of textbooks, e-books, readers, and collateral materials to include software, sheet music books, in accordance with the following terms and conditions. I have Senator Blas and then Senator Yamashita.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I know this is standard language, but I'm just wondering, and as far as the history of this thing, where the money for this is appropriated, and is appropriated actually from funds for the next fiscal year.
That's right. This is what we term an advance appropriation.
Right. But I'm just worried, concerned, I mean, as far as the history, first off, if DOE has actually been making these purchases, and with these purchases, were they always for this amount? Because one of the things I've noticed also, this happens to be a standard amount that that we provide.
Yeah.
Standard language. But I'm just concerned about the history.
Yeah, this was the $1.5 million was the request sent down in the administration's budget. So this 1 point, we didn't change that.
Okay, I think there's some little bit of concern that I can see from my good colleague from the morning. So maybe what I can do is I'll just go off of the questions that I'm sure that she has with regards to this.
Okay. All right. Senator Yamashita?
Thank you very much, Speaker Ben. Speaker Ben, thank you for including this. You know, historically, the amount has been as high as 12 million for textbooks, and then it went down to 9, and then 8, and then 7. And the government has always been very supportive of trying to get the textbooks in. But honestly, the two parts here. One is that DOE needs to do their work in a timely manner, which means those books need to be reviewed and adopted, needs to be reviewed by teachers and adopted by the board. And all of that, the ordering process needs to be in place by March. And when our fiscal year is adopted, as it is now in this time of the year, as long as the administration releases the appropriations, which I believe was the problem last year,
Yes,
there was no monies released for textbooks. And I believe it's being released now, but we're going into September.
That's correct.
So school started this week. So it's a timing issue, and then it's also a process issue with our teachers and leadership. And I believe that now with Superintendent Fernandez on board, I think everything will be better aligned and processed. Speaker Ben, as last year, and I do see that we've included some specific items to the world of the arts, I would ask that we consider amendment. The following are appropriations of GDOE for the purchase of textbooks, ebook readers, and collateral materials to include musical instruments, software, sheet music, and music books.
Okay.
And that is simply because as books are a tool for most of our content, or all of our content areas, the musical instruments are also a tool for that particular area. And then it would be up to the Board of Education to determine how they're going to do that.
Right.
But this would give them the authority to replace all of our musical instruments that are currently being held with masking tape and allow our kids to realize that particular potential of music intelligence.
Yeah. If I may ask you just to repeat where we wanted to put that.
Line 23, page 18, to include musical instruments, software, sheet music. Line 23, page 18. And then the same is on page 19.
19.
Line 2,
Okay.
and line 19
Okay.
on
Good.
page 19.
Okay. Did the clerk get that? Did we get that?
After the word include, yes, I will. On page 18, on line 23, to include musical instruments. And then, comma, then software, sheet music, everything else that's already there. And then on page 19, page 2, to include musical instruments, comma, and the same on line 19, page 19.
Okay. Did we all get that? Okay.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Speaker Ben.
On the amendment, no objections. Amendment passes. Okay. Subsection B, on this subsection then, the superintendent shall order the materials funded by this section, the March 1st, 2013, the report to the legislature that would show and have them posted on the website for the receipts and expenditures of the books, purchases by allotment numbers, and the other information. So that is sections on the advance purchase or the purchase of the textbooks. Next section is the JROTC funds. GDOE, again, this is a carryover section. Authorized to expend the funds from the GROTC fund for the sole purpose of expenditures related to the operations of the JROTC program. As you know, the military component of the JROTC program, the instructors are reimbursed their salaries to a certain point by the Department of Defense, and then that goes into the JROTC fund to fund their programs. Section 9 is summer schools. This would allow the summer school fund to be expended for the operations of the 2012 summer programs as are necessary for the, should that be 2013? That should be 2013. Right? Yeah. So just, can I get an, just an amendment there, Senator Barnes, on Section 9, line 13? Should be for the operations of the 2013 instead of 2012? Yeah, okay. So on the motion,
2012 and put 2013, or just change
yeah,
2 to 3,
right.
okay?
Any objections? No objections? That motion carries. And so this would allow the funds collected to run the 13 summer program.
2013 program.
Yes.
Summer program.
Yeah, all right. Section 10 is the website posting. Superintendent shall submit to the speaker and post and maintain the GDOE website, payments, all payments for prior obligations which are authorized, including the funding source, salary adjustments by position, mandated cash disbursement schedules, number of FTE costs and funding source by school and division, and these should all be posted on the website. Section 11, reports. Superintendent shall electronically report the following to Magalang Guam and the speaker. 15 days to start of the fiscal year 13. Provide a copy of the GG1s or contract of employees hired for school year 2012 and 13. And then 30 days after the start of the fiscal year and monthly thereafter, provide a copy of GG1s or contract of each employee hired to fill any vacancy or new position. Section 12 is another carryover provision from the previous budget. This is the utilities reduction incentive, where if the schools are able to implement energy conservation programs and they're able to reduce their consumption by at least 15% from their annual billing, measured each quarter, they shall have the savings be available to spend to support the school activities for the students and staff, and the savings shall be made available within 30 days of the close of the quarter. Senator Tom Atta.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this is a good provision to provide the incentive, but I'm just wondering, you know, with all the ARA funds that are supposed to be invested into the schools to achieve some of these power savings, the energy conservation and whatnot, I mean, that 15% reduction, if you were to compare, you know, probably, for example, November of this year to that of last year, you know, guaranteed they're going to achieve it. So, I guess I just want to point that out, that it's it's going to happen without doing anything anyway.
Okay. But no amendment, right? Okay. Thank you very much, Senator Atta. And then Section 13 is the Budgetary Transfer Authority for the Guam Department of Education. Superintendent may transfer funds from appropriations made to DOE within object class, except that no fund shall be transferred into the personal services category, except but otherwise provided in here. If a surplus in funding exists within the appropriations for increments, promotions, and reclassifications, such amount may be used to support payment of prior year obligations. And Section 14 is the cost-saving initiative. Superintendent of GDOE is encouraged to implement cost savings plan to include but not limited to consolidation of programs and entities, maximizing on student-teacher ratios, and practicing energy conservation. If the superintendent is able to implement any cost savings within GDOE authorized appropriation levels, the superintendent shall have that dollar amount of savings available for payment of prior year obligations and for the purchase of supplies and materials. We're now in Chapter 2, Part 2, University of Guam. The appropriations for the University of Guam for the next fiscal year from the General Fund and Territorial Educational Facilities Fund, appropriations for operations, $25,688,064 is appropriated from the general fund, and the sum of $1 million from the Territorial Educational Facilities Fund to the University of Guam for its operations in fiscal year 2013. In the federal matching grant and aid, the sum of $2,943,706 is authorized from federal matching grant and aids to the University of Guam for the operations of its fiscal year 13. In the so that gives the University of Guam about the same level as this year, so they were not part of they are not suffering any of the reductions in their operational appropriation. The appropriations for the scholarships and training programs, the sum of $3,599,358 is appropriated from the general fund for the following purposes. That is for student scholarships, financial assistance programs, and program administration. The programs that are being funded by the $3,599,000, the merit awards, student loans, nursing training program, professional and technical awards, Reserve Officer Training Corps, ROTC, the Regent Scholarship Program, the Marine Lab Graduate Assistant Program, Early High School Admission Program, the Pedro Doc Sanchez Scholarship Program, the John F. Kwan Memorial Scholarship Program, and the administration of all student financial assistance programs. The President of the University of Guam shall allocate this appropriation in order to fund said student scholarship, financial assistance, and program administration subject to Section 1513 of Chapter 15, Article 1, Division 3, Title 17, GCA. There are floors that are set aside for the nursing training program shall receive no less than $500,000. The Pedro and Doc Sanchez Scholarship Program shall receive no less than $300,000 of the appropriation contained herein, except that if a surplus exists, such remaining funds shall be distributed to fund other scholarship programs in this section. So, and then the appropriation covers recipients who are eligible for merit awards, and as part of the merit award, they're also paid a stipend. These are the same allocations as in previous years and according to statutes. The first year and second year students receive $200 a month under the merit award program, and $400 for their junior year, junior and senior year, and then graduate students receive a $500 per month stipend. The nursing training program also provides stipends, and it is also at $200 a month, and the third and fourth year students receive $400 a month. The Dr. Antonio C. Yamashita Educator Corps, the appropriations contained in this section is for the Dr. Antonio C. Yamashita Educator Corps, and the President of the University of Guam shall disperse pursuant to the directives and policies of the Education Corps Council stipends as well for the Dr. Antonio C. Yamashita Educator Corps, and funds for the administration of the programs are pursuant to the enabling legislation as amended. And that no more than 10% of the total appropriation for the Student Scholarship Financial Assistance Program shall be used for the administration of the program, and the President of the University of Guam shall post on the university's website all reports mandated by this act regarding the Antonio C. Yamashita Educator Corps. So 3.559358 is the amount provided for those programs. The appropriation, University of Guam also receives appropriations for several of the specialty programs within the university community. Section 4 provides the Aquaculture Development and Training Center appropriation, and that number is the same as last year, $125,254 for the continued operations of the Aquaculture Development and Training Center. This is the Fadian Hatchery. Senator Respicia?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just have a quick question. Do you know if these appropriations were also subject to the 15% reserve in the current fiscal year?
In the current fiscal year, I believe they were. I'm not sure, but this is the full amount and not the 15%.
Yeah, I know, but this means that they didn't get all of their appropriations. So, are you open to carryover provision?
Not at this time.
Not at this time.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Which one? Right. Right. Yeah. Okay. I just want to mention and say that that 10% administration of the students, scholarships, and financial assistance are for all the programs. So it's not just for the Dr. Antonio C. Yamashita Education Corps. So the second appropriation for another program is the Weary Guam Hydrological Survey, and $182,694 is appropriated from the general fund to the university for the fiscal year 2013 for the Guam Hydrological Survey administered by the Water and Environmental Research Institute of the Western Pacific, housed at the University of Guam, same amount as last year. Section 6, appropriations for WERI's Comprehensive Water Resource Monitoring Program, and this amount is $155,626 from the general fund to the University of Guam for that program. Section 7, appropriation for the Northern and Southern Soil and Water Conservation Districts. The amount of $149,348 is appropriated from the general fund to the University of Guam for the operations and activities of the Northern and Southern Soil and Water Conservation Districts for FY2013, and that amount is divided equally between the Northern and the Southern districts. The expenditures are under the direction of the district directors, not the University of Guam, with the consent of their board, and are subject to further approval by the University of Guam. And all of these are not subject to transfer by the university. Section 8 provides funding for the University of Guam for the operations of the KPRG public radio station, and the sum of $89,467 is provided to support public radio on Guam at the university. Section 9, Senator Blas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I guess it's a general question for sections 7, 8, 9, and then on to 10.
Okay.
Are any of these monies, or will any of these monies be used to be able to, for purpose of matching requirement for federal funding?
No. These will not be able to be used by the university for that. It's out of their operations appropriations of $25 million and $2 million.
Will you be open to be able to?
Sure. I mean,
I just to be able to leverage this. I mean, if there's a way to be able to go after for funding and require a matching requirement at it, and I don't know if that can be technical in nature because you have that same language in section 6.
Yeah.
If we can include that same type of language that allows them, not just for the sole purpose, but to allow them as well to be able to utilize the funding for federal matching purposes.
Okay. You wanna make that amendment? I think that, would certainly.
So inclusive, sir, of again sections 7, 8, 9. I know you haven't gone to 10 yet, but to include section 10, to include language that allows these programs to utilize portions of this money for the purpose of matching
federal grants.
such sums that are necessary to match for federal funding.
Okay, federal grants, right?
Right.
Okay. There's an amendment being proposed by Senator Blas to add to Section 7, Section 8, Section 9, and Section 10 the authority to use any portion of the appropriations contained in those sections for the purpose of matching as a matching requirement of federal grants. Okay? So, any objections? No objections? That amendment carries. Okay, so Section 9 is the Guampedia Foundation. The sum of $140,000 is appropriated from the Tourist Attraction Fund to the University of Guam for the operation of the Guampedia Foundation. Section 10 is the University of Guam Rhinoceros Beetle Program. The sum of $200,000 is appropriated from the Tourist Attraction Fund to the University of Guam for the 2013 operations of the Rhinoceros Beetle Program. Section 11 provides money for the University of Guam capital improvements continuing appropriation, and the sum of $500,000 is appropriated from the Guam Highway Fund to the University of Guam Capital Improvement Fund for the purpose of paying the debt service pursuant to Section 16-132, Chapter 16, Title GCA. This was for the Susan Wenya Public Administration Building. Section 12, Program Revenue and Expenditure Reports. These are continuing requirements that were included in previous budgets, where the certain reports for all of these appropriations shall be submitted to the legislature no later than 30 days after the end of each fiscal quarter. The University of Guam shall post the reports as well on the website, and the Magalahin Guahan and the Speaker of the Legislature will receive the written reports of these appropriations. Section 13, once again, a carryover provision for the program annual reports, and these are also, once again, required to be posted on the University of Guam website. Section 14, scholarships, financial assistance, and other reports. Another carryover provision that 60 days after the end of each fiscal year, at the end of fiscal year 13, the President of the University of Guam shall submit to Magalahin Guahan and Speaker of the Legislature in Guahan Excel file and written reports, and post on the University website the report of the expenditures from appropriations made in this act for student scholarships, student financial assistance, the Dr. Antonio C. Yamashita Educator Corps, and the Educator Corps Council. And information required in those reports are outlined in this section as well. Section 15 is the appropriation for the Guam Cancer Trust Fund. The sum of $1,822 or $22,000 and $48 is appropriated from the Healthy Futures Fund to the University of Guam for the administration of the Guam Cancer Trust Fund pursuant to statute contained in 26603D2 of Chapter 26, Article 6, Title 11, GCA, and they shall be used to fund cancer screening, treatment, and support services for fiscal year 2013. I have Vice Speaker Cruz on this
Mr. Chairman, I've submitted an amendment adding a line that there should be a report, and I know initially I told my staff to prepare it monthly, but I would have no objection to changing that to a quarterly report.
Okay. All right. Did you pass out the copy?
I just think we should know what they're using that money for.
No. Did you pass out a copy of this?
Yes, everybody has a copy. It says on what they have monthly, but looking at it, I didn't want to overburden the university, so maybe a quarterly report would be sufficient for me.
Okay. There's an amendment proposed before the body by Senator Cruz, and you should have it on your desk. It would to add a reporting requirement, and it would read to be added at the end of this section. It would read: the President of the University of Guam shall submit a quarterly, so change the monthly there to quarterly, report of all expenditures of these funds to the Speaker of the Legislature in Guahan. Okay.
Thank
Any
you.
objections? Any discussion? None? That amendment carries. Senator Rodriguez? Okay. Can we just, we'll just have a short recess.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, on Section 15, the appropriation of the Guam Cancer Trust Fund, it seems that the submission provided by the governor shortchanges the appropriation to the Guam Cancer Trust Fund. If we were to look at this pursuant to statute, it's supposed to be 15% of what the Healthy Future Funds collect. And this amount is short by about 360,000. And just looking ahead as well with the Guam Memorial Hospital Authority and also the other appropriations pursuant to statute, it seems like it's being shortchanged, and so I'd like to be able to bookmark this as well until we can get some clarifications.
Okay, and we'll try to request some clarification. These numbers were submitted by the governor, and the calculations were performed by the administration, so we'll try to get some clarification. Senator Blas?
Could that be attributed to the 15%?
I'm not sure.
Thank you.
I wouldn't say. Okay. Transfer Authority, University of Guam. Appropriations for the operations of the University of Guam contained in the Section 2, Part 1, Chapter 2 of this Act, or for prior years, may be transferred by the President out of the operations into appropriations for statutorily mandated scholarship programs contained in Section 3, Part 2, Chapter 2 of this Act. The Section 17, continuing appropriations. Senator Blas?
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Back to Section 16.
Yes.
Be transferred by the university out of operation to the appropriation for statutory mandated scholarship programs. Can we tighten up the language here to state that this will go towards the programs and instead other than the administrative cost of those programs?
Sure.
I'm trying to find out the language. I don't want to reinvent the wheel here.
I guess we could say just for statutorily mandated scholarship programs, excluding administrative costs.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So on line 21 of page 29, after scholarship programs, excluding administrative costs. Any Senator Respicio? Okay. No objections? Okay.
Thank
Senator
you.
Respicio?
Mr. Speaker, on the matter of UOG's budget, they were also subjected to the 15% reserve.
That's correct.
And how much did the administration withhold from them?
About $4 million.
4 million.
So we're encouraging them within the next 45 days before the end of this fiscal year to get that released.
And UOG is the same situation as DOE, that if they don't get that full appropriation, that they'll be cutting into personnel.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. Continuing appropriation on Section 17 are for the scholarship programs, that the appropriations made for the scholarship programs in this section shall not lapse and shall continue until fully expended to include payment of prior year obligations. So on the scholarship programs, we want to continue to pay the recipients. So, okay? Chapter 2. Yes. Senator Blas?
Similar to my amendment from
Right.
Section 16 to include that excluding
admin costs.
Yes.
That's right. On Section 17, again, it's exclusive of the administrative costs. Okay, and we'll make the legal counsel fit that in technically. Chapter 2, Part 3, the Guam Community College. The appropriation for the Guam Community College totals $13,301,611 from the general fund to the Guam Community College for FY2013. For the LPN and vocational guidance program, $705,058 from the general fund to GCC to support the operations of the licensed practical nursing programs and the vocational guidance programs. Appropriation for their lodging and management program, Pro Start program, the sum of $24,154 is appropriated from the Tourist Attraction Fund to the Guam Community College for this program. The federal matching grant and aids, the sum of $1,688,448 from the Manpower Development Fund to GCC for the apprenticeship program for fiscal year 2013 is appropriated. Federal matching grant and aid, the sum of $1,057,472 is authorized from the federal matching grant and aid to the University of Guam, to the Community College of Guam for its operations in FY13. These are all consistent with existing authorization levels, except that GCC got a $2,000 bump in its appropriation. Okay. All right. We caught a technical error in D, if I may beg the indulgence of the body. The title under D is Federal Matching Grant and Aid, and it should actually be the appropriation, the Guam Community College Apprenticeship Program. So rather than Federal Matching Grant and Aid, subsection D should read appropriation to the Guam Community Apprenticeship Program. So any objections to that technical amendment? Okay. Section 3 provides report requirements. These are the same and consistent with existing statute. Quarterly reports to Imagalahin Guahan and Legislature. That 30 days after the end of each fiscal year, the report shall be submitted and then posted on the GCC website. And again, these are the same requirements for including the number of participants, the amount expended in this appropriation, the academic courses offered, and the requirements for participation in each of the programs. Senator Respicio?
Just again, how much has the governor withheld from GCC's appropriations?
We believe that the latest information is about a little over $2 million has been withheld from GCC.
So it's a little bit more than 15%.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Chapter 2, Part 4, the Guam Commission for Educator Certification. This is the teacher certification program. The amount of $203,831 is appropriated for the operations of the GCEC for fiscal year ending September 30, 2013. And this is out of the general fund. There are no federal matching grant and aids. Section 3, what you have on the next page of that is Section 3 is the general fund allocation. And this is on the first column there. You have, of course, the object class number, which is salaries, overtime, benefits. The second column shows you the object class account number or budget class number. The third column is the BBMR. It says BBMR FY12. This is what is for being provided to you so that you can see what they are spending after 10 months plus 2 months of projections to take to the end of the fiscal year. And then the last column is the FY 2013 requests by the administration contained in the budget. So you will see that in some of the other, when we get most especially to the executive branch section of the departments and agencies. So for the education certification, they received an appropriation level and are expected to spend $167,671 to the end of the fiscal year. And for FY 2013, the request will provide them $203,831. Senator Respicio? It's like-
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I just ask, because for power, water, and sewer, there's no budget for those items, but I see $6,000 for office rental. Is that, so is utilities part of their lease agreement?
I believe they are at University of Guam.
Oh,
yes,
University of
yes.
Guam.
Okay,
And UOG is not charging them an administrative fee, or?
I don't think so. Yeah. Yeah. So, and the BBMR column contains only the general fund appropriation, not special fund appropriations. Chapter 2, Part 5, Miscellaneous Education Provisions. Purchasing in the Economics of Scale. All agencies receiving appropriations pursuant to this chapter shall take necessary measures to reduce costs by purchasing services, supplies, and materials to realize economics of scale. This is a continuing language from previous budgets, basically trying to do some bulk purchasing cooperation between the educational institutions. Section 2, Local Funds Reimbursement. Funds appropriated to GDOE in accordance with appropriations to GDOE in this act shall not be used to pay for federally funded program activities and expenditures unless such payment is specifically authorized by Guam statute or unless such payment is made pursuant to grants that require that local expenditures be made prior to receiving federal reimbursement. The superintendent of GDOE shall submit a report to Ilesa Kuranguahan and the Magalahi and the Office of Public Accountability to report on all funds expended in FY 2012 for federally funded programs and the details of such expenditures by object class, the number of FTEs working in such programs, the amounts reimbursed by the federal funds, and amounts that have not or will not be reimbursed by federal funds. And then the authority shall cite, the report shall cite the authority to expend local funds for federal programs and shall name the certifying office and give the date of the expenditures. And again, this is to make sure that we don't end up spending local money for implementation of federal requirements unless by grant agreements. Senator Respicio?
Did you want to say when he has to submit the report? Like within,
You're right.
yeah, because he could take the whole fiscal year to do it, so.
Okay.
Maybe, Mr. Speaker, maybe a quarterly report, and if he doesn't have any local fund reimbursement, then he just submits a report saying no
Yeah.
activity at this time.
At the end of each quarter?
Yeah.
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 Okay, so the amendment is to require a quarterly report
Yeah.
within 30 days of the close of the quarter.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. All right. Any objections to that? No objections? Speaker Cruz, did you have your hand up? Okay. Next section, Chapter 3, Health, Part 1, Guam Memorial Hospital Authority. Section 1 is the legislative intent, which shows, of course, the actions that this body has taken over the years to provide support to the Guam Memorial Hospital and identifies those public laws that enacted those support levels. Section 2 is where we have the appropriations. The pharmaceutical funds provides $6,862,541 in fiscal year 2013. Is this the section you wanted to comment, Vice Speaker?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, when we had a roundtable, Chairman Rodriguez had a roundtable with the hospital in May, I believe. They made some mention about the fact that they were having problems with billing, and I had attended a board meeting where they talked about the need for some computers. So I wrote to them in May, and then I wrote to them again August the 10th because they still hadn't responded to my letter of dated May 7th. And I finally got a response last week, and in it, you know, I wish I could read the whole thing to you guys because it goes through this whole description about how they have They got from DOI $1.6 million for a computer program set that they were going to do for billing, and then they have $2 million certified EHR system hardware, and that was awarded to a vendor on December 2010, and the application. But then it gets to towards the end, after he goes through 2 pages of describing all these wonderful new programs that they've gotten, this money that they expended, over $3.6 million worth of expenditures, how they've been going live and training everybody to do these things. This is how the letter ends, and I beg the indulgence of the members, but I think you'd like to hear this. The optimum revenue management upgrade is scheduled for go live the first week of November 2012. The optical chemicals upgrade is scheduled to go live November 2012, and the optimum general financial upgrade is scheduled to go live in mid-January 2013. All of these go live dates are dependent upon having enough desktop and mobile computer equipment for physicians, nursing, ancillary, fiscal and finance, operations and administrative staff to use on these new upgrade systems. Latest computer needs assessment conducted by the IT department in June 2012 identified a total of 102 new computers to replace old existing expiring, parentheses, beyond economic life cycle computers, and a total of 86 new computers as additionally required for departments and units that have identified shortfalls of computer equipment and for new expansion projects at the CCU, ICU, and the emergency room department. Total estimated cost for the needed 188 new computer equipment is $125,000. Funding source to procure this equipment have not been identified or approved. Mr. Chairman, this is like going out and saying, I spent $360,000 to buy a Lamborghini, but I forgot to make sure that it had a battery or tires so that it could move. How are we supposed to help them?
Yeah.
Can we put something in here that some 125,000 of this that you're appropriating for this expenditure in here shall be used to purchase the equipment? The 120, the computers that they talk about, because then they go one more. Combined with as yet as unfunded PYXIS, pharmaceutical supply management hardware, including one each department, supply station for pediatrics, ER, OBGYN, surgical ward, and ICU, CCU, GMH, total integrated billing, unfunded equipment needs of total $1.125 million. Mr. Chairman, they're hemorrhaging up at the hospital. They never signed the contract for a collection agency. 2, they've got all of this computer hardware and software to do all this billing and all this fancy stuff around there, but they don't have the computers to be able for anybody to make any entries. And unless they have all of this equipment so they can properly document their billing for their services and for their pharmaceuticals, they won't be able to collect appropriately from the insurance companies and from anybody else. I don't know what to do with them. I mean, I'm at loss. I'm not sure if at least in here we provide that they shall appropriate they shall use $125,000 for the computers that they describe as needed, and then we'll deal with the 1.125 later. But I just can't believe that they're sitting there waiting, that they can't do these things to get the proper documentation so they could bill appropriately and be reimbursed fully, because they won't and can't find $125,000.
You could probably make an amendment, Mr. Vice Speaker, in maybe from the Section 5 appropriation that comes out of the general fund. It's for their operations, or even from the Section 4, because that appropriation is for operations. And you might want to specify of that amount that the 125
Okay,
be
so
used.
then can you bookmark this and I'll go get the proper,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, all right. So we'll bookmark this so that the Vice Speaker can get the cost associated with the amendment that he wants to make. Okay. Any other discussion on GMH? Section 3 is the appropriation for the pharmaceuticals fund. That was $9,154,054. Section 4 is the appropriation from the Healthy Futures Fund of $1,457,639. That's for Senator Rodriguez. Had some comments on this, Senator?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, this goes back to the same concern I had previously with the Guam Cancer Trust Fund, and that the amount that's been submitted by the governor's office shortchanges what is supposed to be appropriated to Guam Memorial Hospital Authority by about $295,000. And so once we get those clarifications, I would like to be able to come back to this section as well.
Okay, so
Thank
we'll
you.
bookmark this section as well. And then section 5 is another appropriation to the out of the general fund to the Guam Memorial Hospital. This one totals $2,413,495. And again, this is a general subsidy to the University of Guam as determined by this body. So that concludes the section for the for the Guam Memorial Hospital Authority. Continuing on with health, we have part 2, the Department of Public Health and Social Services. The appropriation for the Department of Public Health and Social Services is for $40,756,196 is appropriated for the operations of Department of Public Health and Social Services. This is composed of $35,457,612 from the general fund and $5,298,584 from special funds. And the federal matching grant and aid that is available through the Department of Public Health and Social Services is $26,438,879 for their operations and programs. Section 3 once again shows you the chart. The FY2013 requests by the administration, you'll see in the last column on the far right is for the $35,457,612. And then the current expenditure rate that they are slated to close the year out at $32,697,148. Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just have a question on this chart here on miscellaneous
Yes.
of object class 290. If you can just help me understand what these would be for.
Yeah. Miscellaneous for the schedule for public. This is the Medicaid match. Yeah. So 11,183,191. You see in section 5, that's part of that appropriation for their Medicaid match. Yeah, the schedule for miscellaneous. That schedule is in the committee report and on the website as well.
Okay, I have it here, and I'll take a look at it. And the only reason why I'm raising a question on it is it's a very large amount, and so we'd like to be able to see
Right.
where it goes to, but also trying to be able to find about $146,500 that's owed by Public Health to the Guam Memorial Hospital Authority. And so if we can, you know, I know what the rules of engagement are, is that when we want to be able to reduce something and pay for something, we got to find a way to do it. And so if we could find exactly what that the miscellaneous is, then we can come back to it as well.
All right. So again, did you mark that? Okay. Section 4 is the medically indigent program appropriations. $15,822,907 is appropriated from the general fund to fund the medically indigent program payment revolving fund for MIP for fiscal year 2013. The sum of $351,549 from the general fund and the sum of $648,451 from the Healthy Futures Fund is appropriated to the medically indigent payment program for MIP for the cancer screening, treatment, and support services in fiscal year 2013. These are the same allocations that were pursuant to public law. And are these part of the same? Okay. All right. And then C, no more than 15% of the appropriations from local fund sources in this section are authorized to pay for FY 2012 obligations of the medical indigent program. We allow them to do that because of the lag in billing. So by the time the fiscal year closes out, the billing for August and September comes in October, so they're able to use the October appropriation to pay for those bills, so that, and it just rolls into the next fiscal year. So that's part of the carryover provision in administration of this fund. Section 5 is the Medicaid program. The sum of $11,183,191 from the general fund. Appropriation in Section 2 is authorized as the local match requirement for the Medicaid program. And the sum of $13,669,200 is authorized from federal matching grants and aids to public health for the said purpose for fiscal year 2013. So the Medicaid program consists of the local appropriation of $11 million plus the federal match of $13 million. And then no more than 30% of the appropriations from local fund sources in this section is authorized to pay for the FY 2012 obligations. And again, that's just the lag in billing and the request of the Department of Public Health to allow them to continuously pay for these bills through the fiscal year. Section 6 is the Child's Health Insurance Program. The sum of $2,004,504 from the general fund is authorized as the local match requirement for the Children's Health Insurance Program, and $4,359,914 is authorized from the federal matching grant programs to run the set program for the Children's Health Insurance. So we provide a matching of little over $2 million, and the feds provide $4.3 million for total for the Children's Health Insurance Program of a little over $6 million. Section 7 is the Division of Senior Citizens, and this requires that no less than $7,590,333 from the appropriations contained in Section 2 is authorized as the local match requirement for the programs of the Division of Senior Citizens, and $3,055,341 is authorized from the federal matching grant and aid to Department of Public Health and Social Services for the operation of the Division of Senior Citizen programs, to include State Office on Aging, the Adult Protective Services, the Support Services Program, congregate meals, home-delivered meals, preventive health, medication management, and National Family Caregiver Support Program. As you see, in other of the other federal programs, we usually provide the local matching and the feds provide matching, and sometimes it's almost 2-to-1 or 3-to-1. This program, because of the continued erosion on the federal subsidy program, we actually overmatch that program. So we provide more local funding than the federal government does for the Division of Senior Citizens. It's one of the it's gone upside down basically. It used to be that the feds would provide $7 million, and we would provide $2 million. And because of the continued cuts in the federal side, we've now turned around and we're now providing the bulk under local funding. So we are placing a priority of using local resources for our senior citizens. Senator Rodriguez?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I thank you also for making that statement, because I think it's important. A few months ago, we've seen that this legislature was being told that we weren't providing assistance to the senior citizens of our community, and that's not the case. We know that there was a transition from a nonprofit organization that was handling the senior citizen centers, then it went back to the government. And we were told as well in this session hall that after the temporary period of about 3 months, that this would go out for an RFP, and that, of course, did not happen. And we know that there's some struggle that's going on now at the senior citizen centers in terms of maintaining their operations. And so this is just another plea to the department and to the administration that they must fulfill their commitments to move forward. I mean, if we're going to have an RFP go out, I think we're way behind the curve again. We're already in mid-August. Fiscal year starts October, and we haven't seen any RFP out. So just let this be a reminder.
Okay.
So thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Any other comments on that section? Section 8 is the public assistance program payments, and up to $3,506,214 from the general fund appropriations in Section 2 is authorized as the local match for the federal matching grant and aid to public health for the public assistance payment programs and the administration in FY2013. And $4,555,461 is authorized from the federal matching grant and aid programs. Senator Yamashita?
Thank you very much, Speaker Ben. Speaker Ben, I want to make a comment, and then I'll do more homework on my own. But as you will recall, during one of your hearings, we talked about SNAP and how the food program really, it's a $9.5 million program, and they really needed more personnel. This is a continuous over, and they were asking for, it was matching funds, I believe it was $333,000. But I've noticed overall that the amount in this substitute bill has increased for public health.
Yes.
So maybe they'll be able to address that. So I'll take a closer look at that. The last time I did speak to that particular director, he said that they were talking about it and they were assuring him that they would be able to help him out with his human resource issue. But he also said that if the amount of money didn't increase with that, then it would be problematic.
Right. What we've done here is we've actually allowed great flexibility in terms of moving funding from one program to the other. So the governor and the director can, or the director has, quite a bit of leeway in terms of working with the governor to find the ability to move some funds from one section to the other.
Thank you. And because the increase seems to have been about $4 million increase from last year for public health?
No.
No?
Last year's appropriation level for public health out of the general fund was
30?
This 32 is what they will spend, what they is projected to be spent at the end of fiscal year.
So, but was there an increase?
35. Yeah. Last year, the general fund appropriation for public health was $33,597,456.
So this is an increase?
The request is, yes, it's a slight increase.
Right, okay.
The request. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Speaker Ben.
Okay. medicines and vacant positions for the Department of Public Health's community health centers. The sum of $493,784 is appropriated from the Healthy Futures Fund to fund the community health centers for fiscal year 2013. Number 10, Section 10 is the Enhanced Allotment Program. The sum of $653,697 from the general fund is authorized as the local match requirement for the Advanced Allotment Plan. This is for Medicaid Part D program for our senior citizens, and $98,963 is the authorized federal matching grant and aid to the Department of Public Health for this program. Section 11 is the Department of Public Health's carryover authorization. It's the unexpended balance in the general fund appropriations and special funds shall not revert to the general fund, shall be available until fully expended for the original purposes of said appropriations. And the director shall submit a report to the speaker and the governor, to the director, to the Speaker of the Legislature regarding the allocation, demographics, and expenditure of the appropriations contained no later than 30 days after the end of each quarter, and post the same on Public Health's website. The Director of Administration shall pay MIP and Medicaid vendors on a first-in, first-out service. So it's for the Medicaid and Medicare programs of the carryover authorization. Section 12, appropriations to the Guam Cancer Registry. Again, this was pursuant to recent legislation. Section 26603, 4D4, Chapter 26, Article 6, Title 11. $121,470 is appropriated from the Healthy Futures Fund to the Department of Public Health and Social Services to maintain the Guam Cancer Registry. The Department of Public Health shall provide funding to the University of Guam for services, supplies, and/or materials in executing the Memorandum of Agreement between University of Guam and the Department of Public Health and Social Services. This is a program that's housed at Public Health, but they implement it through the University of Guam through an MOU. Section 13, prompt payment of MIP patient claims generated at Guam Memorial Hospital. Department of Public Health shall process all MIP patient claims generated at Guam Memorial Hospital Authority no later than 45 days from the receipt of said claim pursuant to Section 9902 of Chapter 9, Article 1, Title 10 GCA. Again, this is just for us to encourage Public Health to process these payments to make sure that GMH gets paid to assist them in the management of their cash flow situation. Chapter 3, Part 3, Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse. The sum of $17,044,560 is appropriated from the operations of the Department of Mental Health for fiscal year ending September 30, 2013. $14,183,926 is from the general fund, and $2,860,634 are from special funds for the mental health, and the sum of $225,862 of the general or special funds appropriated in this section is authorized for local federal matching grant and aid. So those are the resources available, and as you'll see in the chart, the funding or the expected expenditure of mental health this year is expected to, the general fund side is expected to close at $9,833,167, and the budget request for FY2013 is for $14,183,926. And this is, there's quite a number of vacancies in this to support the federal receivership, Medicaid, consent decree, And the vacancy funded in here is approximately $2.2 million, and about 350,000 is available from mental health. Yeah, 300,000 to 500,000 from their own vacancy labs. Right? So, right. Senator Yamashita.
Speaker Ben, is there any way we can appropriate 100,000 of that to mental health court? It's their clientele. It's their people who are at risk. They're all ages. That was grant money that the court system had gotten, and it's no longer there because it has expired. We have about 80 current clients who go through the court system. I just believe that it's a viable program, that this particular part of our community, it truly helps them get back on their feet and become as self-reliant and as independent as possible. And this whole family permanent injunction part, I'm thinking is really to ensure that we are able to take care, provide supports and services for the particular types of populations. And I just wonder if 100,000 can fund mental health court.
We'll
bookmark it?
We'll try to, yes, we'll
Okay.
bookmark that, and I'll try to get the staff
Thank you.
to
Thank you,
look
Speaker
at
Ben.
that and work on that. Okay. Senator Rodriguez?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask for your assistance as well. I'd like to put to proffer an amendment that would authorize them to pay a debt that they have with the Guam Memorial Hospital Authority within their budget here. And I don't know if that's a way we can do it, but I think the amount of money that is owed to GMH for services rendered needs to be settled. It's about $706,340. And so if we give them the authorization, and if we could give them the direction to make that payment, I would like to, but I need your guidance on that. But I just feel that amount, a lot of it, a chunk of it is over 180 days, and so that needs to be settled, and money paid to the hospital.
Okay. All right, we'll work on that. We'll try to find the appropriate language to find it, to allow them, for mental health, they owe about $700,000 to the hospital. Okay. So we'll work on that. Section 4 of mental health appropriation is for $839,040 from the general fund for the outsourced programs of drug and alcohol detoxification, rehabilitation, and prevention services, provided that the expenditure of the funds required with the reporting requirements of Title 48 USC 1421. And these are the federal grant programs that govern these pass-through. These are basically pass-through for mental health vendors for their program. Section 5 is the Oasis Empowerment Center for Women, Alcohol, Substance, and Homeless program. $50,000 is appropriated from the general fund to Oasis Empowerment Center for the women's services program related to alcohol abuse, alcohol, substance, and abuse and homeless program. These are all requested and are consistent with prior years' funding for these programs. Section 6 is reappropriation of the unexpended and unencumbered appropriations to the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse in the amount of $3 million. In September of, from the appropriation contained in Chapter 5, Part 3, Chapter 3 of Public Law 3177, shall not lapse and is hereby reappropriated to Department of Mental Health for fiscal year 2013 for the payment of court order deposits that are due in fiscal year 2013 in accordance with the modified funding schedule for the implementation of the amended permanent injunction program. We provided some funding for the permanent injunction deposits that were required. We were able to renegotiate those required deposits in FY 2012, and we're allowing for that authorization to be used to pay for any required deposits that are ordered by the court for the permanent injunction in 2013. We don't have any orders at this time, but we're anticipating and planning for that. Section 7 is for expenditures related to the Federal Management Team Plan of Action. For fiscal year 2013, funds reimbursed to the Government of Guam from the Federal Management Team Community First Federal Credit Union amended permanent injunction trustee account shall be deposited into and recorded in the existing permanent injunction Department of Mental Health Substance Abuse Fund, and the sum of up to $10 million is authorized from the Federal Management Team Community First Credit Union amended permanent injunction trustee account funds reimbursed to the Government of Guam only to fund personnel and operations identified in the Federal Management Team Plan of Action as filed in the District Court of Guam. So we have the Federal Management Team and their account. Sometimes Gov Guam pays for it. We get reimbursed from the Federal Management Team account, and we're authorizing for that to occur. Chapter 3, Part 4, Department of Integrated Services for Individuals with Disabilities. The appropriation request by the administration is $1,930,553 for the operations of DISIT for fiscal year, and the sum is composed of $1,235,777 from the general fund, and $694,763 are from special funds. And so that provides the total of the $1.9 million. DISIT also receives $2,992,651 from federal matching grant and aid program. And as you see, the expenditure rate projected for this year is pretty much what they have been authorized for and are requesting to be allocated for, in FY 2013. And so that concludes the Chapter 3, Part 4 on the health chapter. And the next chapter is the chapter on the unified judiciary. The appropriation for the unified judiciary contained in Chapter 4 from the general fund, $23,341,886, and that would be for their operations, and that's the governor in the allocation had reduced that amount, and that is that the same amount as the allocation by the governor? Yes. So this is the allocation provided by the governor for the judiciary. Section 2 provides funding for court-appointed attorneys. Yeah. So that's right. Oh yeah, but this is the current. Yeah, just to, if you recall, the governor gave an allocation for after taking the money, and so, but this amount is above the governor's allocation of the 3% cut, so we restored that to their current expenditure rate in this fiscal year. Section 2 provides for $745,433 for the court-appointed attorney's fees for indigent defense, the same amount provided as last year. The adult and juvenile drug courts receives $651,277 from the general fund for the operations of the adult and juvenile drug court. Again, these are the same levels as provided last fiscal year. Section 4, Family Visitation Center, $145,000 is appropriated from the Safe Streets Fund to the Unified Judiciary for contractual services for operation of the Family Visitation Center. This is what we normally refer to as Emily's House. Section 5, On the administration of the appropriation provided to the judiciary, the unified judiciary is authorized to transfer funds from appropriations made in Chapter 4, Section 1, in the appropriations made in Chapter 4, Sections 2 and 3 and 4, but not transfer operations out of the appropriations made in these chapters into the main judiciary budget. So we're protecting these appropriations to these programs from transfer. Section 6, the Judicial Building Fund. For FY 2014, the judiciary shall provide its Judicial Building Fund FY 2014 budget to Imagalaing Guahan and the Speaker of the Legislature on or before June 30, 2013, and post the same on its website. We usually get the Judicial Building Fund after we do the budget and after we close the fiscal year, so we're just asking them to move that up by a few months so that we know what the budget uses of the Judicial Building Fund as determined by the Judicial Council before we conclude our discussion on the budget and during the budget discussions. Section 7, Judicial Building Fund Revenue and Expenditure Reports, a carryover reporting requirement from previous budgets, that they shall post quarterly reports no later than 30 days after the end of each quarter. And the Unified Judiciary authorization to fund any operational shortfall. It's authorized to fund operational shortfall for fiscal year 2013 from the Judicial Building Fund, consistent with the covenants and provisions of loan documents between the judiciary and the Bank of Guam. So we gave them greater flexibility in using those funds. Senator Palacios?
Just to be clear, so section 1, 2, 3, 4 are individual appropriations. So the total of that would be somewhere in the 24
Yes.
point something.
That's correct.
Okay,
That's
that's all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So, Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'm looking at the committee report and looking at the table that outlines the different departments within the judiciary. Does that mean these programs are what we're authorizing to be funded?
No, the judiciary is a lump sum budget. And
Okay, so it's
and then
gonna
they
be-
allocate it from the Judicial Council side.
Okay, and so this amount, the 20,
With the exception of sections 4, the programs here that are funded, that are broken out, the court appointed, the juvenile drug court, family visitation, those are appropriations to that program. The other programs that you see in the committee report are the purview of the Judicial Council.
okay. And so, and my interest here is, as well is with Senator Yamashita is to ensure that the mental health court continues. So we'll wait for that language.
Sure.
If we need to deappropriate from mental health, I would support that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Senator Spicia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in recognition that the Unified Judiciary is a co-equal branch of government, I do want to point out and express appreciation that you took out the governor's desire to repeal the automatic budget allotment. Said to the judiciary, and this budget does not reflect the executive branch's desire to repeal that law. Now, I wanted to ask you if we could provide for a continuing appropriation, because in consultation with our oversight chair, Senator Palacios, we all know that the judiciary is not receiving 100% of what's been appropriated to it currently. And so for this particular instance, are you open to a continuing appropriation? So, so that once October 1st doesn't come, whatever money the judiciary didn't get from the current fiscal year, so they're in a no-lose position, and that eventually the executive branch will make current to honor what's expected of them. Maybe we can recess and then come back.
We'll recess.
But I'm
on
asking for some consideration for the judiciary to have a continuing appropriation, so that whatever is still owed to them, they can still expect to get that over the course of the upcoming fiscal year.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll-
So I move
we'll-
to recess till 2 o'clock.
We'll recess until 2.